The gavel struck the mahogany bench with a sharp crack, echoing through the packed chamber like a gunshot. The hush that followed was so complete, you could hear the faint creak of an old woman leaning forward in her pew. A shaft of late-morning sunlight filtered in through the stained glass windows of the Supreme Court, casting rainbow colors across the rich wood and stone of the room, and right onto the face of Representative Jasmine Crockett as she stood, spine straight, gaze unflinching, at the center of the storm. Her palms were damp, but she didn't wipe them. Not now, not after everything. Justice Stephen Breyer, long retired but specially invited to sit in on this extraordinary hearing, leaned forward with narrowed eyes and a tilted chin. He was listening, intently. So was everyone. The clerks had stopped scribbling. The stenographer's fingers hovered over her keys. Even the distant hum of the building's air system seemed to pause, as if the entire structure held its breath. Jasmine's voice rang out, not with anger, but with power. "Justice," she said, turning toward Breyer, "this isn't about party lines. This is about dignity. It's about a mother in Dallas who cries into her pillow every night because the system sees her son's skin before it sees his potential. It's about a constitution that promised liberty and justice for all, and a people still waiting for that promise to be fulfilled." She took a breath, and as she did, something shifted. You could feel it in the air, electric, ancestral, like the weight of history pressed up against this moment, daring it to fail, pleading for it to fly. Let's go back. Jasmine Crockett didn't grow up with dreams of courtrooms. She grew up in Beaumont, Texas, in a 2-bedroom house that smelled of lemon pledge, old books, and soul food. Her mother was a schoolteacher with eyes that saw through lies like glass. Her father ran a garage that was more grease than business, but he always came home with oil under his fingernails and stories in his mouth. He told her stories about fighting, not with fists but with facts. He taught her that justice wasn't a system, it was a practice, a choice made every day in small ways. As a girl, Jasmine would sneak his dusty law textbooks from a box in the garage, even before she could pronounce half the words. "You ain't gotta be loud to be powerful," her mother would say, tucking her in. "But you better be loud if they're not listening." By the time she was 20, Jasmine had traded Beaumont for DC, dreams for drive. She studied law, worked cases others wouldn't touch, defended kids labeled lost causes, and slowly carved out a reputation for never backing down. But politics, that was never part of the plan, until it was. After a tragic police shooting in her district, one more young black man with potential erased before he had a chance to live it, Jasmine was pulled into the arena. Activism became public service. Her voice, once confined to courtrooms and city halls, now echoed in Congress. She fought like hell, for justice, for equity, for truth, and she didn't care if it made people uncomfortable. She wasn't here to comfort, she was here to change things. And that's how she ended up here, standing in the Supreme Court of the United States, facing off in a landmark hearing that had the entire country watching. The case, McKinley v. United States, a sweeping civil rights challenge to the use of predictive policing algorithms that disproportionately targeted communities of color. The plaintiffs argued these AI systems were trained on biased data, reinforcing the very prejudices they claimed to remove. Jasmine, not a lawyer in this case but invited as a special amicus to present argument on behalf of the Congressional Civil Liberties Caucus, knew the stakes were bigger than code or crime statistics. This was about precedent. This was about power. And who got to wield it? She wasn't alone in this fight. Subplot 1. Daniel McKinley, the lead plaintiff, a 19-year-old who'd been arrested 3 times without committing a single crime, each time flagged by an algorithm as a high-risk individual. His mother, Carla, sat in the audience that day trembling in her Sunday dress. She'd raised Daniel on her own, working double shifts at the nursing home. He was brilliant, gentle, wanted to be an engineer. Jasmine had met them both on a community visit 2 years ago. That meeting changed her life. It reminded her that policy wasn't abstract. It was personal. Subplot 2. Justice Penelope Hart, the youngest justice on the bench and the daughter of a conservative legal dynasty. She had spent her career trying to escape her family's long shadow, always towing the line between originalist values and the evolving moral conscience of the nation. Deep inside, she was torn. She knew the system was flawed, but she had been trained to believe that change should be cautious, deliberate. Jasmine's presence in that courtroom cracked something in her armor. Back to the moment. Jasmine stepped closer to the bench, her voice lower now, deliberate. The algorithm that targeted Daniel McKinley was fed arrest records going back decades. Arrests, not convictions. That data came from a time when black boys were arrested for walking home too late, for existing. You tell me, Justice, what kind of intelligence is that? Breyer blinked slowly. You could see it in his eyes, memory, pain, understanding. I've read thousands of arguments, he said, his voice breaking the silence, but rarely one that so clearly exposes the heart beneath the law. He straightened, then did something no one expected. He clapped. A single, solemn clap, then another, and another. It was hesitant at first, but then came a rising chorus. Not just Breyer, not just the other justices. The entire courtroom, lawyers, observers, clerks, even the guards, rose to their feet in a standing ovation. In the Supreme Court of the United States, for a black congresswoman from Texas who had just redefined what it meant to speak truth to power. Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. After the hearing in the quiet stone halls outside the chamber, she found Daniel waiting. He looked older than his years, dressed in a borrowed suit, his hands twisting nervously. "You really think we're gonna win?" he asked. Jasmine looked at him, really looked, like she had the first time they met. "What already did," she said softly. Because they listened. Later that night, alone in her office, she scrolled through hateful messages online, the ones calling her a race baiter, a liar, a disgrace. But for every venomous comment, there were 10 more. Teachers in Missouri thanking her for giving their students hope. A grandmother in Georgia saying her grandson wants to become a lawyer now. A kid in Oakland who wrote, "Mems Crockett, you made me feel seen." She closed her laptop, sat back, exhaled. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The court would take months to rule. Congress would continue to resist reforms. Racism wouldn't disappear because of one powerful speech, but something had shifted. A door had opened. The system had been reminded, forced to remember, what it was meant to be. And sometimes, Jasmine thought, change doesn't start with winning. Sometimes it starts when the whole room finally stands to applaud, and they see you, really see you. And then they listen. And that, in the quiet reckoning of the moment, is the beginning of justice.